listening to the podcast of the Academy of Professional Celebrants, the UK's premier celebrant training provider. Whether you're an established celebrant, if you're just starting out, or if you're wondering if it's the career for you, our podcast is here to inspire you and help you tap into the knowledge and experience of our many celebrants and the wider industry. So, join with our host, Derek Duncan, as we dive into the world of celebrancy, sharing with you tips and advice from our extensive network of celebrants and others in the industry. We are the Academy of Professional Celebrants. We are here for you. Your success is our success.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Academy of Professional Celebrants podcast. We hope that the podcast continues to be a source of inspiration for you and that you find some useful tips in the conversation that follows. I'm your host, Derek Duncan, and joining me today is Keith Donnelly. Keith is a little different to most of the guests I'll be talking to, as he isn't actually based here in the UK. Hello, Keith, and welcome to the podcast. I wonder if you could begin by telling us where you are and how you came to be there in the first place.
Sounds good. Hi, Derek.
Hello.
I'm delighted to be here. I am here in Fuerteventura, in the Canary Islands in Spain. I can imagine that some people might already be rolling their eyes and discontinuing to listen, and that's absolutely fine. But if they do, stick with us. I can tell them as to why I'm here. When I was very young, I came to work in the Canary Islands. I first went to Gran Canaria. I was there for a few years. Well, I was there for 4 years. I was working as a holiday rep for Thomas Cook. And after 4 years, I was sent, and I use the word sent, it wasn't asked for, to Fuerteventura, the quietest island. I don't even think it was on my radar. I'd never heard of it. Well, I'd heard of it, but it was just never up there. And I came here in 1999 initially, and hated it. I stayed for about 4 months, and I begged and screamed to ask to go anywhere else, and eventually I was sent to Tenerife. And then I really hated Tenerife, so I begged and screamed to go back to Fuerteventura, where I did. I spent 5 years here between 2000 and 2005, always in the travel industry. And I don't know if anybody knows the island, but it's quite small. It's quite quiet in comparison to the other islands. And after 5 years, it felt that I'd exhausted it. I needed to go somewhere else and see the rest of the world, sort of thing. So I did. And by chance, I went on holiday to Las Palmas last January. And the accommodation, everything was super expensive because it was carnival time. And by super expensive, I mean like $2,000 for the month. So I thought, no, I'm way too tight to be spending that money for accommodation. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump back over to Fuerteventura, catch up with some old friends, and see how they are. So I did, and I never left. I feel home. I feel like I'm in the right place to be. And just while I was here on that sort of wee holiday, I thought, I could live here. So I do. I decided that this is where I'm going to lay my hat for a bit.
Where was home, Keith?
A bit of a rolling stone, to be honest, Derek. And I say that again in the nicest positive way. Home before here was Scotland, because that's where I'm from. I kind of went back to stay in Carluke.
Okay.
I got trapped there during COVID. Initially, I came back to take some time out, and COVID sort of put a scamper to all the plans, and ended up staying back in Scotland for 4 years, which is just, if you know me, you'll know that that's quite a big deal. I'm meant to be in flip-flops and shorts and on a beach and with a sangria in my hand. I am not meant to be in a duffel coat in the rain waiting on a train. That's just not my life. I did not write that script. So that was quite a big deal. But home before that has been, I've lived all over the world. I've lived in Mexico, Morocco, Malaga, all the Canary Islands, all the Balearic Islands, but in mainland Spain, Leeds, just to bring it back a wee bit more casual. So I'm a bit of a rolling stone. I go where the opportunity is. I go where the work opportunity is, or where my heart takes me. And it's here.
To be fair, Keith, anytime I've visited Lanarkshire in December, I've seen people wandering around in flip-flops and shorts. So maybe it would have been that unusual. So what was it that made you want to take the plunge and do the training and become a celebrant?
Okay, I honestly feel that I started work when I was about 12, and I don't feel as if I ever stopped. So I was going on a holiday when I was younger, and I needed money. And I wasn't going to get the money from my mum and dad, or I wasn't going to get enough of it. So I took a little job in a shop, stacking shelves, and I'd done that for a couple of years. And then after school, I became a holiday rep, which I don't know if anybody knows that profession, but it's demanding, it's constant. Days off are sort of few and far between. I stuck with travel for about 20 years. I finished... I worked up with travel. I'm getting tongue-tied, sorry. I worked up with travel up until about 2006. And again, it remained that constant. And then I decided to go even busier and run a hotel, which is even less sleep. I'd done that for a year. And after that, I became a civil servant in Malaga, which was good. It was enjoyable. It was all around about the time of Brexit. So there was lots of work involved with that happening, but there's only so much you can talk about Brexit. And I found that about 14 months of conversation of Brexit, I'd had enough. So the plan was that I was going to take a year off and go back to Scotland, spend some time with my family. I'd recently lost my mum, so it was good for a good time to go back and sort of reconnect with family and catch up and enjoy life, for want of a better expression. As we know, COVID arrives and takes over the next 4 years of my life. I randomly, during COVID, end up becoming my carer for my grandmother, which was never on the plan, never on the agenda. And whilst I'm quite a caring person, I did not see myself going down that caring role in that sense. And I stayed with my grandmother for about two and a bit years. So after this life of non-stop work since I was 12, remember, I'm putting that in again, I'm a hard worker, and then caring for 2.5 years for my grandmother, I just felt frazzled. And I thought, right, I've got to get back to work now. We've had the COVID, it's all gone. What's my future looking like? And I was pretty clear that I don't want it to look corporate. I don't want it to be 7 days a week. Ideally, it will be 4 days a week. I want weekends. I want the sun. And I need to enjoy what I'm doing. I'm no longer just want to be making money for a business or a company or somebody else. It's got to be about me. And I started to explore what that could be. Now, I've always had side hustles going on in the background. Now, that sounds dodgy, but it's absolutely not. It's just the expression I'm using. So, for example, I've always had Airbnbs. They've been ticking along. That's almost a business in itself. I have 4 of them that I manage. So I was looking to expand that a little bit, but it still wasn't going to be enough, and it wasn't going to be challenging me. So that's when I started looking at celebrancy. Now, to just pause that conversation for a second, about 4 years ago, I went, when I was living in Leeds, for a session on Reiki, which somebody had recommended to me. And the lady who performed the Reiki on me was just amazing. She was lovely. She was just on the same level as me, and I kept in touch with her. And I happened to notice on LinkedIn that she was now a funeral celebrant. And I reached out to her and I says, this really interests me. Can you tell me more? So she did. And I thought that could be my answer. And I thought, yeah, I could be a celebrant. It's going to hopefully afford me a lifestyle where I can work as hard as I want to work, but also it doesn't have to be too demanding. And I can still do my little side hustles. I could still do that anywhere. And here I am in Fuerteventura doing that.
And had she trained with the APC?
She did. And that is, again, randomly, because she spoke to me. She spoke to me about celebrancy and how it was in the role and what to expect and so on and so forth. And she never actually really mentioned anybody at the time because she was in Leeds and I was in Scotland. She was under the impression that I was in Leeds as well. The mystery, where is he now? Where in the world is Keith living now? So she thought I was in Leeds, but I explained to her I'm in Scotland. And she then said to me, oh, you need to look up this guy called Stuart. He done my training, look him up. And I remember writing in my notepad, this guy's name, I need to write this down. I'm going to write it there. And then when me and my friends started investigating who we were going to do our training with, this name Stuart appeared again, and I thought, that is who I'm going to do the training with.
Okay. And you enjoyed the training?
I loved the training. I really enjoyed the training. The reason we chose APC, and when I say we, I mean my good friend Barbie trained with me. It's something that we wanted to do together. We looked at lots and lots of people all over the UK. Barbie's a bit of a kindred spirit like myself. If the training was being performed in Bali, we would have gone to Bali. So
maybe Stuart, take note of that for a future residential course.
And listen, I'm willing to fly out there and help if anybody needs that in Bali.
I think there might be a queue of guest speakers for that one.
We, pardon me, we looked at many companies, and we really did. We printed everything off. We sat together, we're looking at the reviews, the videos, the why you should choose us sort of thing. And we chose APC like we would choose a funeral celebrant ourselves. It was about how APC communicated to us. What did their appearance look like online? Because that's really all you have to go on. And when we opened up the conversation to start asking about dates, it was the tone of voice coming back. And I just felt, again, quite warm that this was the company I wanted to go to. And the fact that it was the company of the name of Stuart, who had been recommended to me, was just almost like again, somebody like-minded like me said that this was the guy to go with. So all just kind of pushed us towards there. But yeah, to answer your question, loved the training, loved the environment. There was only 6 of us, which was just right. It was quite a good mix of personalities as well. I don't know, I'm sure you can realise, Derek, already, I love to talk. And it was just a nice bunch of people. I felt that it just suited my learning styles really, really well.
Great stuff, great stuff. And out there in Fuerteventura, how are celebrants regarded? Is it a relatively new thing out there? Does religion play more of a major role in day-to-day life than it might here in the UK?
We, as I say, as I keep on saying, we are like the smallest of the Canary Islands. We have a massive expat community, but nowhere near as you would find in Tenerife, Gran Canaria or Lanzarote. But we still have a large community. However, it's almost still a bit dated in the sense that there is no real alternative to a traditional funeral, or certainly a traditional religious funeral. So before me, it would either be a priest who would deliver the service, or if somebody was religious, perhaps Church of England, and they wanted to be buried, or they wanted their funeral to be to have a religious aspect, there was a lady on the island who would perform that, but there wasn't really anything for the gap in between.
Yes.
And again, everything I'm saying with love, but it was almost very, people don't have any religious drawing whatsoever, but at the final show, they have to have a religious goodbye because there is no alternative. So even if someone didn't want the Spanish priest to deliver it, but they perhaps wanted it to be done in English and in their language, the alternative was you can have the religious in English, which is almost forcing somebody to choose two things that they don't really want. So I've arrived, and it's almost opened people's eyes, and it's been really positive. People are seeing that there is an alternative. It can be a nod to religion. There can be hymns, songs, poems that are recognising people's faith, or it can be void of that, and it can just be a complete celebration of life, and it's about their favourite poems or their favourite songs. So it's been really well received, to be honest, and it's nice because I can see people coming to funerals and thinking, here we go again, we have to sit through a Spanish priest speaking in Spanish. We don't really know what he's saying. We don't know when to stand. We don't know when to sit. And it's over in about 15 minutes. I have to say as well, if you're not religious and you are being married, if you are having your funeral, it's very quick. It's almost like if you don't have time for religion, I need to make this quite a quick service. So for people to have that opportunity with me, that they can have the service that they want as long as they want, and it's not going to be rushed. And I have spoken to them, and I know who we're saying goodbye to. It's people are noticing that that's an opportunity here now.
So when you say as long as you want, does that mean that you're not restricted in terms of timing for your service?
Not at all.
Wow.
And it's a real luxury, because sometimes people like to have long songs, or people like to have sort of welcome music. At a funeral that I'd done recently, the lady was a bit of an artist, so we had pieces of her work in the crematorium, and we were encouraging people to look at this as you're milling around whilst you're waiting to start. That was quite nice, and I'm still a bit of a novelty. So the crematorium staff are almost like, yeah, Keith's not going to do this in 30 minutes. But the crowds are normally quite big. It probably could be a bit good for business, so let us take a wee bit longer.
And are your services, Keith, are they largely for expats, or do you get some services for some of the natives as well, for want of a better word?
They are really for expats. There is that very, very strong tie, Derek, that when someone passes here, they will have a religious funeral, whether they want it or not. It's a family thing, it's an island thing, it's a village thing, that it would take a sort of brave person, a brave local person, to be able to break away and say that I don't want this to be religious. So mines are predominantly for expats. That said, though, when I use the term expats, that can be expats from anywhere. Yes. I performed for a German, and they wanted the service to be conducted in English because family in Germany wouldn't be able to understand it in Spanish, and English was the common language amongst his friends here on the island. But yeah, predominantly just for expats.
But I guess another aspect of it might be the time scale. Stuart was talking in training recently about in different parts of the UK, your lead into the funeral is of a different length of time. It might be in some parts, for example, in Northern Ireland, 4 days. And it might be in a different part of the country, you might get 3 weeks lead into a funeral. So what how does it work for you? And also, how do you, as somebody that's doing something very different out there, how do you get your clients, and who gives you your clients, or do they seek you out by themselves?
Okay, I'll start with how I get the clients. I'm really, really fortunate in the sense that on my small island, there is only one funeral director. So relationships are important. We do get on very, very well, which is brilliant. We speak to each other even when there is no business to be done between us. We like to clock in, have a chat, go and take a coffee, which is great. But I am very aware that that is my only source of income. So I need to keep that relationship strong, which I'm glad it is. I normally get notified from the funeral director, who also owns the only 3 crematoriums on the island. So all business goes through their doors. If the call doesn't come from them, it comes from friends of the family or my friends. It's a big island. It's quite lengthy. To drive from one end to the other end of the island would take about 2 hours. But it's such a small island in the sense that really everybody knows everybody. So what's the name of the guy that's doing the funeral services? Yeah, let's talk to him. Let's use him. So I do get a lot of referrals coming through from friends and friends of friends, which is nice. That's where they come from. The differences, or the big difference here that I have, is time, as you mentioned, Derek. When people talking that they've got 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I think, what a luxury. Yes. I normally get 24 hours from the call to delivery.
Okay.
And that's quite tough. I make it work. But it's just the way here that they like things to happen quite quickly. There's no point in taking any longer than it needs to be. There is a bit of wiggle room there. Sometimes I speak to the family and I ask them, would it be possible? Is there any reason why they cannot extend the time? And sometimes people are flying in. It's just not possible. But if they have room, I then speak to the funeral director and wiggle with them and say, I need longer than 24 hours. And you know yourself, Derek, when you're trying to put together somebody's service, you're trying to get as much information as possible. Some of those can be quite dry. You don't know much about them. And in the WhatsApp chat, people are saying, why don't you speak to their friends? Why don't you go to the local pub? Why don't you this? And I'm thinking, I have 24 hours and I don't think I'm even going to get to bed on this one. So that's the biggest challenge that I have here.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. Maybe some of us could learn quite a lot from that and getting something out quickly.
When I recently done one in the UK and I had about 3 weeks lead up, and honestly, I just felt it was just this magical amount of time. It was, I can look at it tomorrow. No, I'll have a cup of tea and I'll look at it. I'll start to look at it tonight, and then I'll do a wee bit tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I'm going to look at poems that might be, etc. And I just thought to myself, what a life, what a luxury to have. And here it's almost, as soon as the call comes in, everything gets dropped. And it's like, right, that now takes precedence for the next 36 hours.
Yeah, well, one of the luxuries we have here in the UK is being able, for most of us, being able to have our own internal first draft ready, to go out, walk the dog, have a coffee, come back to it, maybe even the next day, read over it again, make any changes that we want, and then send it as our first draft to the family. And you simply don't have that luxury.
There is no luxury of a first draft. It's the draft, and that's what we're going with. I suppose trying to take the positive from it, Derek, is that people are almost still wrapped up in grief. You know, that stage where things are happening so quickly, and it's almost like somebody's dealing with a funeral, the undertaker, somebody's dealing with the flowers, somebody's dealing with the celebrant. It's almost going too fast for a lot of people, which if I could slow it down for them, I would love to and just say everything's good. But when it comes to the service, it's there, and there is no time for first draft. There is a couple of other differences that I would like to mention as well.
Yes, please.
Here, it's always a cremation, especially for expats. It's always a cremation. I've never done a burial. So whenever I hear people saying that they have a burial or they have a graveside service and things, that lights me up, because I think, how is that? Because it's just the way here. That cremation is the answer. We don't have obituses.
Okay.
And I am the DJ, which tickles me because I'm a frustrated DJ. But they have a very, very good sound system, to be fair. But they're so used to dealing with a priest, for example, who would come in and he's going to read pretty much the same hymns, the same speeches, and he's going to play the same songs every single time. So when I arrive and I have we're going to run with this music, and they're going to open with this music, and we're going to have the close with this music, and they're thinking, oh, this is different. So I asked them, how do you want this music presented to you? And they're thinking, oh, we don't actually know. Can you bring it in on a CD? What? I always think to myself, I've got 24 hours. I am not burning music to a CD. Where will I find the equipment to do that? So it's trying to work with them to think, how can we do that? How can we sort of streamline or make the process smoother for the sound system? We don't have an order of service either, which is something that I'm definitely going to change. Again, I still feel like the new kid in the block here, but I am going to introduce that to say to people, yeah, let's have your loved one's photo, let's have their favourite song or their words, and almost try and give them a wee taste of their home.
A wee thing about order of service booklets. I wasn't given one at a funeral the other week, which is okay because everything's scripted, but I like to have it just in case a year down the line somebody else from the family gets in touch because somebody else has passed away, and I either want to link the two services, perhaps if it was a husband and wife with the same poem or the same reading or something. So I went to the back of the crematorium and said, do you mind if I take that order of service booklet? And the attendant said, yes, I do. And I wondered about that. And then he explained it. And for that service, there was never going to be an issue. But the explanation was basically that if something goes wrong in the service, and say, for example, a certain piece of music has been played and it's the wrong thing, then they have the order of service and they can prove what they were meant to have been playing via the order of service if anybody were to put in a complaint afterwards. So that is something that I've never thought of, I've never heard about, but maybe for folks out there, it's something to think about.
It
quite
seems
different.
Quite strange, but okay, each to their own.
Yep, absolutely.
When I did perform a funeral in the UK, I'd never used this obitus, remember? So I was quite nervous, probably as nervous as I had been before I'd done my first funeral. And I kept on trying to randomly put it into people, to the undertaker. Like, yes, I'm a celebrant, but I just need to familiarise myself with the system and how it works. And they casually said to me, "Oh, you've used the obitus before, haven't you?" And I was like, "Actually, no, I haven't. Could you just quickly show me?" And she said, "Oh, it's bog standard. You'll know what to do." And I'm thinking, I don't. And I don't want to say I don't know what I'm doing, because then you might start to think, have I done this at all? And when she showed me, and it was just a remote control with like 3-4 buttons on it.
Yes.
I'd never seen this before, but I genuinely, the fear in my head was, you're going to have to land this plane. Someone's going to tell you how to land a plane, and there's buttons everywhere. It's going to be that dramatic. And when she showed me a remote control with 4 buttons, I thought, oh, come on, I've got this. I've got this. Start, stop, pause. Yeah, all good. And I couldn't believe that when the song finishes, it automatically goes to the next song. Again, guys, what a luxury, because whilst I'm delivering the service, I'm thinking I need to queue up the next song on my phone whilst making it read, whilst I'm reading the service and I'm looking for the next song. It's tricky.
You're one extreme and I'm the other extreme, I guess. I'm quite lucky, based in Edinburgh, in that through here, all of the crematoria, the funeral directors deal with obitus for me, and it's the crematorium attendant that presses all the buttons. So I have absolutely nothing to do other than stand there and hope that my script is accurate and that we deliver a really good funeral for the client.
I think that just sounds so easy.
Oh, it is.
Can I give you 2 last differences as well?
Yes.
The biggest thing for me is that in Spain, funerals tend to be very, very casual. We're in a hot country. Nobody wants to be wearing a suit. It's quite common for people to come in sandals, flip-flops, shorts, T-shirts. It's very, very casual. And that's something that I'm not trying to change. I'm just trying to say to people, it can be as casual as you want it to be, or you can be as dressed as you want it to be. I always go suited and booted, tie, but when I meet them on the day and I see how they're dressed, it's sometimes more appropriate to take off the tie, perhaps just have the open collar, or sometimes I take the jacket off and just play to that. And the last thing that I want to highlight, the difference, which is just because it's a biggie, is here, one of the processes is that somebody has to formally identify the body before it goes. And that's normally left with the family. And that's something that I can do as the celebrant. And people are welcoming of that. And by that, Derek, I mean that after the service, and every service I've done has been a closed casket. After the service, the coffin is taken to the furnace, and the lid is removed. We have to identify that it is the person that has just had the funeral and is just about to be cremated, and we place a little stone on their chest with a serial number, and the undertaker signs and I sign to say yes. And that's almost like a fear for some people here, that it's built into mythology that they have to do that. And I'm pleased to tell them that's not something that you have to do. I can do that, and you don't have to worry about that, because it's quite daunting for people. That is the last goodbye.
And how does that feel for you as a celebrant? It's maybe somebody that you've not met before. How does it feel to have the casket opened before the cremation takes place?
Absolutely fine. Honestly, strangely fine, strangely comforting. And something that I do as well, which is just a me thing, is when I'm in the crematorium, the body is often displayed. for the family to go and spend some time before they go. When I am there, I always go and see the person that I'm about to do the service for. And it's almost just like this unwritten contract in my head, or this unwritten agreement that your family have chosen me to do this. And I would like to see the person that I'm getting the honour of saying goodbye to. And if I can, I always try and get a minute myself just with them to almost say goodbye and thank them for the privilege of doing that. So things like that don't bother me.
Thanks, Keith. Keith and I are going to take a short break, and we'll be back with you shortly.
Our very own host, Derek Duncan from Edinburgh, has been busy recording our brand new series of podcasts, ready for you all to soak up. Do you fancy podcasting with APC and share your experiences with our members? As a thank you, we pay you £60 for every podcast you record with us. So, why not send Derek an email telling him what you would like to talk about? Derek@funeralcelebrantacademy.co.uk.
The Academy of Professional Celebrants.
Welcome back, Keith.
Hey, good to be back.
We talked about funerals just before we broke up, and how you get the clients referred to you. One thing that struck me is that, especially with working within the expat community, there'll be, I would guess, a relatively small number of funerals in any 1 year. And the population of the island, forgive me if I'm wrong, is around about 120,000 in total. So funeral services can't be the only thing that you do for your work as a celebrant. What other things do you do to keep your celebrancy work busy?
Remember, I was saying that I was looking to try and wind down a wee bit. I don't want to be so busy, and I would like to put my feet up. Derek, I never put my feet up. I very rarely watch television. I'm always tapping away at something. I'm always looking at something. I'm always helping somebody. Could you just look at this? Could you just look at that? So I'm pretty constant, although it's not with funerals. But what I do, as well as the funerals, is I am starting to do lots more pre-writing people's services for them. So again, because people have been coming along and they've been seeing me perform the funeral, and they're saying, "Oh, how long did you know them?" You know, that thing that we all love to hear. And I never met them at all. I didn't know them. That was just through the family. I don't go into too much detail and tell them that I met the family and I had 8 hours notice to perform this, and I've done my best. But I just tell them it's all from the family. And that's spawned a bit of interest where people are saying, "Oh, I'd quite like to get my affairs in order." So I've done a few of them now, where I go and meet with the person and we go through their story. And it's just doing exactly what I would do for a service, but the person is in front of me and they're alive and they're there and they're telling it. And I'm going to make a reference to a radio program called Desert Island Discs, which hopefully everybody listening knows what I'm talking about. But it's where somebody gets sent to a desert island and they have to choose their favourite songs. And they're interviewed about their life throughout that. And that's honestly what I feel like I'm doing with somebody. I sit down with them for about 2 hours and I say, "Okay, tell me about your life." But in that conversation and in that answers, I say to them, "So what kind of music were you listening to as a child? Do you know what number one was when you were born? Or what was your first dance at your wedding?" And it's allowing me to actually reach in, because you know what it's like when you ask friends and family, "What did your mum like? What did your dad listen to?" You get this blank expression. So to have the privilege to be able to ask the person in front of you. The other thing is as well, I've got a bit of a community here where there's like groups. So one of my friends is in a group called Knit and Natter, which brackets she calls Bitch and Stitch. And it's basically a group of ladies who get together every Wednesday and they have a bit of a knit and needle session and they talk about everything. And I was mentioned, and she told me quite a few people came to the funeral that I did and they loved it and they'd like to speak to me. So I'm trying to get involved in little groups like that where I can take it to them and have a chat with them as a group, and then hopefully it'll lead off into business. But it's good, it's enjoyable. I try and devote probably about a day a week to the celebrant business. If nothing is coming in, I still try and devote a day a week to how can I grow it? How can I put my thing out there? The other thing I do is I also have a magazine here in Fuerteventura. And this was an example of a friend saying to me, "What are you doing with yourself? You cannot be retired. You cannot be putting your feet up. You've got to work. Would you like to do something? I have a magazine. Would you like to help me with something?" And I was all ears. So she asked me to review a restaurant. I love my food, Derek. So this was music to my ears. Would I go and eat and then give a review? Absolutely. So I done that. And then she asked me to go and speak to somebody else about something else. And then she asked me to have a look over this. And that's now evolved into me and my friend now have a magazine. And that was never on the agenda, but it is. And the magazine we publish 3 or 4 times a year. And it's distributed over the whole of the island. And the only thing that I'm kind of kicking myself is I haven't used the magazine as an opportunity to market myself. And I can hear everybody pulling triggers at me and putting their hands in their face saying, "Really? You don't even talk about yourself in the magazine?" But what I didn't want to do was sort of jump in and be, "Oh, I'm this, and I'll eat food, and I'll bury people, and I'll write your service." I just wanted to dial it back a wee bit. Yeah. But definitely going forward, there is going to be a feature in there of how I can approach.
A discreet full-page advert every 3 pages, I think, would be appropriate.
Very subtle. Very, very,
very subtle. Keith, are there any awkward situations that you've come across in your work, or I guess the opposite as well? Any moments that have stood out for being really special for you?
Awkward situations. I'm going to talk about funerals that I've been to as a guest, and I find myself almost, because of my background, I've always been organising, leading, controlling the situations. I need to be aware of what's happening. So whenever I go into a wedding or a funeral, I feel like I should be wearing the earpiece and saying, "Right, waiter's out in 5. Where's the coffin? That should be appearing." I don't go almost like a normal guest. And when I've been at funerals, Derek, it's so common for the person conducting the service to say the wrong name or the wrong thing. And I just think to myself, I hope nobody else heard that. Just let it go. They've been called the wrong thing. Oh, that's twice. Or the wrong music's been played, or the music cuts off just a bit too quick. And it almost just looks like it could have been organised a bit better. So I've always gone into this celebrant journey of myself with, let's try and take away those small, awkward situations. Here, when I started, people have told me straight from the horse's mouth situations that happened to them, where once there was a service being conducted and the priest, I said that because I didn't want to say who it was, but the priest forgot the name of the person he was burying and clicked his fingers to the man in the front to ask him his wife's name. And I just think that is unforgivable. We can call it lost in translation, we can call it a mind slip, but for that to happen is horrendous. I heard a horse's mouth story where the celebrant had finished the service, and as soon as they walked outside, the first words were, "Somebody owes me money for today's service. Who am I speaking to?" Again, stop. Just choose your time and your place. Probably my biggest horror story that I've had is we had what I call a crossover service, where it was part religious, part non-religious. Now, the family really were not religious in the slightest. The deceased was not religious in the slightest, but there was this, do we owe something to family who are religious, who would like to see some sort of nod there to religion? So the family and I, we spoke together and we said, okay, what about if the priest comes in and perhaps blesses the body? Yeah, that could be an option. And then we can have the normal non-religious service that I would provide. Now, I wasn't, look at me trying to get myself away from this one, but I wasn't responsible for arranging the priest. The funeral director was. And in the morning, the priest didn't turn up. And this was not good. The family hadn't turned up at this point, but I was aware that the priest hadn't turned up. Now, my background, again, the things that I've done in the past, I'm always looking for a solution. How can we do so? How can we cover this up? How can we get away with it? How can we smooth it? But faced with this one, Derek, I'm thinking, I cannot cover up that the priest is not there. And I had all sorts of things going through my mind thinking, could someone else be a priest? And I'm thinking, stop that train of thought. We cannot go there. But we managed to juggle it a bit. We got in contact with the priest. He came after the service, so he blessed the body just before it was cremated, and we managed to smooth that over. The family were really none the wiser, but I'm just thinking, no, too close for comfort.
Yeah, there are some times where the family aren't going to see some of the things that are going on in the background that you're desperately trying to make sure that everything is running smoothly, as you just said, or even just kind of running to the order in which it would be expected to run. So I was talking to somebody at a graveyard recently, and they said that the celebrant had led the family over to the graveside and begun the service, and they were kind of getting towards the stage of committal, where my friend and the funeral director had to kind of gently walk up behind them and say, do you not think it might be appropriate if the body was here at this point, because the coffin was still in the hearse? So it's about knowing what you're doing in every given situation and making sure that you know what's happening, never mind everybody else.
There was an incident, again, from the horse's mouth, because I don't like to repeat something if I don't know it's true, but there was, from the horse's mouth, a service that was being conducted, and halfway through the service, the husband realised that the coffin did not match the coffin that he picked for his wife. And this was not one of my services, I hasten to add. And can we just pause for a second? Can we just check? And it wasn't his wife. The wrong coffin had been wheeled in. And again, unforgivable, which is why when I said earlier on, I make a point of going to see the person I am going to perform the service for. Whilst I'm saying goodbye and almost asking for permission from them, I'm also looking at the casket thinking, that has to be the casket that I'm talking to. When I see it wheeled in front of me, I need to be aware of that. And the family might not notice that, but I notice that. One of the funerals I done where I said about the priest not turning up, that particular service, Derek, not everything that could have gone wrong, but lots of things went wrong. The family gave me a lot of last minute changes. So I was in the office trying to print off this new script for myself. And again, because it's so last minute here, because time is of the essence, I always have a script. It's printed and on screen, just in case. The printer started to jam. And then when I managed to fix that, we ran out of paper. And I had to print on the other side. And I thought, this is... The son came in and asked me if I could add in a song that had just came to him. And I thought, why don't we play that at the end at a different time? And then he asked if he could speak some words. And I just thought, this is all... The sound system started screeching. And what I did, I made a point before the service started, was speaking to a mutual friend of the deceased in mine and asked, how much of a joker was she? I've heard she was a bit of a joker because I feel that she's testing me here. And I could not... When I stood up, I said to people that I spoke to many people who were there for the service, and I mentioned that she'd been called a joker quite a few times. I said, and I cannot help but feeling that she's here today talking about it, because everything that could go wrong, I'm being pushed. Everything. I said, so if the music starts playing in the middle of me speaking, or the music doesn't play, or I said, I feel that she's going to be here at work because I have to explain what all these little glitches that I'm having today. And it got a laugh, and it then set the scene for the rest of the service, which was great.
Quick thinking. Keith, there are going to be a number of celebrants and prospective celebrants out there, some who have just completed their training, some who are thinking about embarking on training. Obviously, all of them want to succeed in this new career. What do you think makes you a good celebrant? And I think you've already covered a lot of points over that. And what might be your tips for them?
A tip that I would definitely say is believe in yourself. If you have booked yourself onto that training course, you've obviously got up to the first step where you've had a moment where you believe in yourself and you can do that. And then it's just seeing it through. So once you've finished the course, now by the time you finish the course, you've delivered to your peers. That's quite exciting, and it's also quite nervous. but you've done it. I mean, I delivered to 5 people on the course and Stuart. I've done services for smaller amounts of people. So it can be as big as a service. Just believe in yourself. Have a look at maybe online, get some things on like imposter syndrome, because I feel that a lot of people have been good accountants or bankers or ran hotels, or they've been nurses, or they've been housewives, they've been house husbands, and suddenly when it comes to being a celebrant, they've got this doubt. Now, a celebrant is going to throw nothing at you more challenging that kids could throw at you. You know, that nothing. So just believe in yourself. You're not an imposter. You've got this and you can do it. And reach out to the community, because we're here to remind you that you've got this. And honestly, even if something goes wrong, even if you're addressing the wrong coffin, or the priest doesn't show up, or the music breaks down, it's all forgivable. By comparison, it's not a wedding. People put a lot of emphasis on the wedding being the day of their life. I see the funeral as people are almost so sad that they don't notice the glitches that are going wrong. Stop being so hard on yourself. What I like to do with people is I could talk about celebrants and death and services all day long till the cows come home. When people say, "Oh, Keith's a celebrant," that's my opportunity to talk about it. And I try to position it very quickly, almost in a sentence or 2 sentences quickly, to say to people, "Yeah, you should speak to me sometime," or it's a bit just giving somebody a good goodbye. Everybody's been to such poor funerals. Everybody's been to a poor funeral. That what I like to do and what I like to tell people is, honestly, it's just about planning it in advance. You tell your friends what your favourite song is or your favourite poem, and let's celebrate that when you're there. Because the amount of times I'm sat there and people are trying to think of your favourite hymn and they don't have a clue. Let's tidy all that up whilst you're still in control and you have an idea of what you would like to do. On that note, I would also like to do a service for somebody who knows that they're going to die. Perhaps they have a terminal illness and they know that it's a living funeral. I would love to perform that. That would be ideal.
I suppose it's taken a number of years for celebrancy itself to take off, and as it has taken off and it is being more widely used and accepted, then those sorts of things are going to become much more common. Like you said, sitting with people while they're still alive, getting their story sorted so that they know what's going to be said about them on the day of their funeral, or even, as you just alluded to, them sitting there at their own funeral service. That idea of a living funeral is pretty powerful, isn't it? Something
that I took away from the training when we were sat in partners and you had to compose a service. And when my service was being composed, I made the choice that I asked my friend to compose my service. And I was thinking to myself, I'm doing that because I want to know what it looks like so that I can take this to Fuerteventura and have this conversation with people. And I want to know what you would ask me. And for the life of me, Derek, the thought of somebody standing up and talking to what will obviously be a packed room, there will be hundreds and hundreds of mourners there coming there to say goodbye to me. That's my humour, by the way. To talk about, he went to this school. And I'm thinking, I'm not bothered what school I went to. It's not important to me. So why would I want anybody to stand up and say that? Now, I know that that's important to some people. The street that they were born, the church that they went to, the church that they went to, Sunday school, I know that the school, to me, that is just fluff. My life started probably when I went overseas and started to see the world and started to live, etc. That's where my story begins. And I just feel that there's almost this fixation talking about the year that somebody was born and where they were in the pecking order of the family, and they lived in that street for many, many years. Inevitably, the answer is, and nobody from that street is here today. So why are we talking about it? And I just think let's talk about the good stuff, the fun stuff, the exciting stuff. That. I also think as well that what makes me a good celebrant, I like to try, and when I'm talking to the family, I like to sort of slip it in, who made the introduction? Like, you've probably given my name and my number by somebody and I knew them, or your mum's a very good friend of my friend. And I try and make any connection there that's possible. I also try and make people smile. It's difficult, it's hard. It's often, I'm not saying it's inappropriate or appropriate, but it's difficult often to smile when you're asking the information to put together the service. But there are pockets in there where you can say she was a great artist, or she loved her music, or he was a great writer. Always look for the wee pockets there, and especially if somebody passed peacefully and with a good life, let's celebrate that. Like he got to a good age, and from what I hear, he was ready to go. That's take comfort in.
One of the other things that is recommended in the training is that you don't just stand alone as a celebrant, that you find another celebrant that you can kind of pair off with, so that if somebody has a sore throat in the day, but their script is all ready, then you can call that person and see if they're available for it. So I'm putting in my bid to be your number 2 in Fuerteventura. As long as all expenses are paid, I'll be out there if you've got a sore throat.
Flights from Edinburgh are always cheap to Fuerteventura. You should have a look at that.
I will do. So on behalf of the Academy, Keith, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I hope that your celebrant business itself goes on from strength to strength, and all those other things that you're involved in do the same. In a moment or two, I'll ask you to give a reading of a piece of poetry or prose that you find particularly powerful when you read it at services. In the meantime, can I remind everyone out there to get in contact with me at derek@funeralcelebrantacademy.co.uk if you have any ideas or you want to take part, like Keith, in future podcasts. Keith, can you explain a little bit about the piece you're about to read and then close the podcast with it? And thanks again for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much for your time. I've honestly loved it, and just like what you've said to everybody, if anybody would like to do this, try it. It's really enjoyable.
Great.
The piece that I'm about to read, it just really resonates with me in the sense that not every funeral is happy. Not every funeral is a life well lived. They never died of old age, but perhaps they went tragically, and that there might be a lot of grief still there. Perhaps if somebody's took their own life, it's quite difficult to finish up with something that's going to capture the feeling almost. And this piece, I have read it a couple of times, and it just resonates, and it just seems to go down well. Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the units to measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his church, not what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need? Was he ever ready with a word of good cheer to bring back a smile or banish a tear? Not what did the sketch say and the newspaper say, but how many men were sorry when he passed away.
Thank you, Keith, and take care.
Thank you very much, Derek. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the podcast of the Academy of Professional Celebrants. We'd love you to be part of our community. We offer training in all aspects of celebrancy, so why not check out our training program on our website and see if there's a course that you could take part in. We have trained hundreds of celebrants who are now well established in their own business. Our post-training support network is second to none, and you can be sure that help and inspiration is never more than a message away. Keep looking out for more podcasts coming soon. The Academy of Professional Celebrants. Your success is our success.